Hi there everyone, and are you interested in numbers? That is, saying numbers in English. Well, this is a lesson for you. I'm going to be talking about numbers, business English numbers. It's a great business English expression. Let's talk numbers, let's look at the figures. Two different expressions, lots of different numbers, and keep watching and I will explain the pronunciation and how we say numbers and how not to get confused about numbers. Okay, so enjoy the video and please subscribe and comment on it and share it if you like it. My name is Rich, you're in the tesolrich English channel, so I hope you enjoyed the video. I think you may be surprised about how we say some of these numbers. Okay then, let's start. I'm going to show you some different types of numbers. From easy ones like dates, years, to currencies, big numbers, fractions, decimals. These are all numbers which are really useful in everyday business English or in your normal general English life. So here's the first set. Okay, this is a set of numbers expressed in different currencies, British pounds, euros or US dollars. So just take a look at them. How do you say these numbers? To write them out as they are written, and this really explains how to say them. Then I will say them obviously, so you get the pronunciation. Then I'll give you a few tips about how to avoid confusion when two numbers are similar in the pronunciation, so there may be a misunderstanding. So let's start off with the small number at the top here. 4.99. £4.99 if you need to express the currency. Now the second number here is £499. There it is written. Okay. Now some British people will say it costs £4.99. So that's where the confusion comes in. Here's a bottle of wine, okay? You walk into a wine shop, you're in England, you could be in America, but let's say we're in England and you say, oh, I'd like this bottle of wine, how much is it? And the person in the shop says, it's £4.99. Now, that could be £4.99, but on the other hand, it could be £499. It could be a vintage bottle. So you have to be very, very clear to say, now is that £4.99 or £499? You see the difference in the pronunciation. £499, the currency comes at the end. Right, let's move down the list here. Now this number here, this one here, is £14,585. The next one, what's that? Well, it's £40,585, because it is important to know how to distinguish between the 14 and the 40, and it's the same with 13 to 19 or 30 to 90. Big difference. You need a technique to distinguish them. How do you distinguish between these teens, that is from 13 to 19, and from the 30 to 90? Well, here's an example, and it's a very simple example, but it will give you the technique. Now, the one I'm using here is in English, and it's in the English unit of p or pence. P or pence. And so we've got two prices here, 19p or 90p. So this is how I teach my students, business students and general English students, how to check that you've got the right price or the right number. And here you've got a marker pen. There's no price. So you ask the shop assistants, excuse me, how much is this pen? And they will reply, it's 90p. Now you hear 90, could be 19 or 90. So how do you check? you can check in this way, very simple. Is that 119, 19? Okay, and then you see the how I've separated the numbers. Or is that 90p, 90? And this applies to all your numbers which are 13 to 19 or 30 to 90. There's a big difference, so it's good to have a technique to resolve any confusion. Right, let's look at this number here. This is quite a big number. The numbers are getting bigger. Okay, so let's take this written one, 653,000 plus. Okay, in British English, this is how it's written. 653,580. Now that's British English. So then in the American English it becomes 653,580. So it's a very small difference, but we drop the "and" in American English. How do you say that number? It's another big one. Well, here it is. 2,599,243. British English. A non-British native speaker or an American may say 2,599,243. No ands. Very subtle difference, but it's just an interesting point. Now we get to three quite big numbers. Okay, the first one is $13 million. The next one is $30 million. And a really big one here, $45 billion. So you're talking big numbers here. To a couple of bigger numbers. These are in millions of euros or millions of dollars. And I've written them up for a reason. So how do you say this number here? Well, you can say it in two different ways. That's why I've written it. The first way you can say it is $1.5 million. And the second, which you will hear a lot when people are talking to you, and you simply use a fraction. $1.5 million. Two ways to say the same number. One is using a decimal, the other is using a fraction. Now the fractions we use commonly are these in English, so let's just go through them. They're down here actually. So, a quarter, a half, 3/4, 1/3 or a third, and 2/3. Those are the most common ones to use. Otherwise, if you've got really precise decimal numbers to say, I'm going to move on to that and explain how you say them. So here's a number, it's expressed as a percentage. How do you say that number? Well, a lot of my business clients actually get this wrong. Even if they are good business English students and they've been doing business for a long time, they will say that number is 0.45%. Now that's not correct, because the correct way of saying this number is 0.45%. Each of the decimal points is pronounced as a separate number. Why? But here's another example. So how do you say this number? Well, it's the same. It's not 1.67%. No, it's 1.67%. Here's an interesting number to say. How do you say that number? Again, it does depend whether you're speaking in British English or American English. Because most Americans, actually all Americans, and a lot of English, and obviously internationally, they would use the word 0 for that number. It's a 0. But in British English we have our own way of saying it, and it's one of those terrible English words to pronounce, naught. Now you can remember these from the past tense of lots of irregular verbs: catch, caught, buy, bought, bring, brought. Now you don't need to use this when you're producing or presenting these numbers, but you will hear it, so don't get confused if an English person says this number, 0.45%, there it is again, they will say many times 0.45%. So do remember it, so you don't sort of look at a person saying, what are they saying? Naught point, what is naught? It's 0. So there you go, lots of numbers. I really hope this video has been useful, and I'm doing another video fairly quickly after this one. They do take time to produce, and it's going to be about describing graphs and tables in a presentation, describing trends going up, trends going down, using different verbs. So thanks very much for coming in and watching, and I hope you will watch some other videos in my channel, and subscribe please, comment, share it with some friends, and thanks again. Goodbye from me.